My boyfriend just slammed $300 worth of vintage Burgundy against our kitchen wall, and I'm a wine specialist. You believe that your sophisticated understanding of wine makes you extremely intelligent, Matthew yelled, snatching another bottle from the counter. Nobody cares when the 2015 Jeffrey Chamber tea exploded against the refrigerator, causing red wine to pour down like blood. Concerning your pretentious nonsense, my palms shook as I witnessed years of meticulous collection being ruined in a matter of minutes. Through the paper-thin walls of our Irvine apartment, our neighbors could surely hear this. Mrs. Chen next door had likely called the police in the past, but Matthew always managed to charm his way out of trouble. I muttered, "Please stop." But he was grabbing for my beloved Barolo immediately. What did you say about his brown eyes? Spoke up, Rebecca. The bottle shattered, and I was filled with that old wrath that made my stomach knot. I closed my eyes and felt wine droplets fall like tears that I was unwilling to cry. I pushed past Matthew and hurried for the door, snatching my purse as I did so. He yelled after me, but I was already downtown. Irvine was bustling with afternoon activity as I strolled down the steps, my heart thumping against my ribs, wandering around until a happy woman carrying a clipboard came up to me and said, "Pardon me, would you mind answering a brief survey on nearby companies?" She was wearing a bright yellow volunteer shirt. Before I could say no, she led me to a gorgeous blonde. We're pairing folks at random to answer the same questions. This is Elena, a woman approximately my age. You will both be answering questions about wine tastes and places to eat in the area. Butler smiled warmly and held out her hand, making something tight. Her eyes were the most amazing shade of blue I've ever seen. She said, "Looks like we're survey partners," with a tone that made my chest relax for the first time in months. With a faint California accent, we sat on a seat close by as the volunteer read the questions out loud. Elena's responses showed, when asked about our perfect night out, we both acknowledged our sophisticated taste and sincere enthusiasm for wine culture. "You truly understand your vintages," Elena observed, preferring quiet wine bars to packed clubs. After I said that I preferred traditional methods, "Are you working in the field?" I confessed that I was taken aback by her sincere curiosity. As most people's eyes went glassy, "No kidding, my family owns Butler Vineyards outside the city," she said as I brought up wine, leaning forward with excitement. I would love to hear your thoughts on our upcoming releases at some point." During our conversation, I started giggling for the first time. For weeks, unlike Matthew, Elena never interrupted or disregarded my information. She offered her personal expertise running vineyard operations and posed insightful queries. "Relationships can be tough when you're passionate about your profession," she added in a light-hearted manner, but her tone betrayed a deeper meaning. Realizing that some people don't value commitment, I carefully responded, omitting any information regarding after the survey finished. Matthew's antagonistic attitude toward my work grew, and we sat on the sidelines, neither wanting. Elena took out her business card to sever the connection. "If you're ever interested in visiting the vineyard, give us a call." I felt appreciated for an hour as I walked home, clutching her card like a lifeline, because I could use someone with your experience. Something valued rather than useless and foolish. But Matthew was waiting at the door of our flat with roses from the grocery shop, with the rehearsed apology I'd seen far too often. "I'm sorry, baby." He moved closer, and I noticed the beer on his breath. Those wines were just sitting there. "You know I get anxious about money." Even still, the flowers quivered in his hands as his voice changed, growing softer but in some ways more menacing. I lied. "Where have you been for 2 hours conducting errands?" Matthew examined my face with those calculating eyes and shoved Elena's business card deep into my pocket before he could see it. "You smell like pricey perfume." Eyeballs. I mentioned that when I dropped by the mall. Matthew's face softened a little as Sephora was working on samples, but his hold on the roses became more firm. "I was afraid about getting sick 3 days later." Rebecca, until the petals that were spread on the floor didn't go away without telling me again. While Matthew was at work, "Rebecca," I called Elena, my hand shaking as I dialed her number, hoping you would call her. "I would love to show you around the Vineyard Butler family if you're free this afternoon." Your voice sounded genuinely pleasant. 30 minutes outside of Irvine. In the main gate, I was greeted by Elena, who was dressed in jeans and her blonde hair gleamed in the midday sun as she wore a white cotton tee that said, "Welcome to my family's tiny corner of." She led me to the tasting room, saying, "Paradise." Her father was a strict man. When Elena introduced me to him, he appeared doubtful, saying, "Another wine expert, huh?" "Dad, Rebecca." the sommelier at Chalaron Elena, stated, "We get plenty of those." She is certain that she is more knowledgeable about wine than the majority of those in this industry. The vineyard manager is a seasoned man named. These citysums believe they know everything about Carlos, who hardly acknowledged me. Since Elena's cheeks are red from reading books, why don't you show Rebecca the... I sampled the wine attentively, noting its flavor, and asked my new Pinot Noir dad for her honest judgment. This has remarkable complexity and well-balanced acidity. The terroir truly shines through, producing stunning fruit. Her father's eyebrows went up a little as she made an expression with just enough oak influence. Most people just remark it tastes good. If you harvest at the ideal sugar level, the 2121 vintage will be your best to date. Levels I proceeded with, and the tannin structure indicates that it will age well for at least 8 years. Carlos looked at me. Elena smiled proudly as I assured her that she might truly know what she was talking about with her father. Afterwards, she showed me the wine cellar, a cold stone room with oak barrels and dust mows dancing in shafts. The beauty happens here, where the golden light filters through tiny windows. Elena murmured quietly, "Some of these barrels are older than us both." Elena took us between the rows and described how they age. When our hands came into contact with the same wine thief to sample a barrel, lightning shot through my body. Elena didn't turn away right away. Her blue eyes locked with mine in the gloom, and for a brief instant, everything paused. "Rebecca," before I could reply, she whispered, leaned in, and gave me a gentle kiss. Her lips tasted like the wine we had been drinking. Every nerve in my body came alive when I kissed her back, and the sample was delicious and nuanced, forgetting everything save the way she made me feel valuable rather than useless. And the warmth of her tongue, both of them were breathing heavily as they gently broke apart. "I've wanted to do that since the moment we met," Elena said. Her lips, I blushed and muttered, "Me too," touching my lips where the drive had been on hers. Going home was like going back to jail. Matthew was waiting with dinner, ordered from my favorite Thai restaurant. He pulled out my chair with an overdone, "How is your day, babe?" gentleness. I just finished working on the restaurant's inventory, and I adore knowing he is sitting opposite from me, examining my face. "You look different. Where are you?" As we ate, Matthew talked about his day selling insurance, but I could hardly hear him. "That's good to see." Kept returning to Elena's kiss, the feel of her hand in mine, and her sincere interest in my thoughts. "You're not," listening to Matthew's abrupt, cutting apology. I answered, "I'm just tired. I thought you would want to attend that wine festival next weekend, so I booked us tickets." My stomach fell as I saw which wine. "You're supposed to be at the Temecula Butler Vineyards event." His smile was completely innocent, but there was a glint of coldness in it when he talked about wanting to test their things. His eyes should be entertaining, right? In fact, I mentioned that I might have to work that weekend. Matthew's Fork is hosting a special tasting event, and my heart is racing. Clinked against his plate. "Cancel it." "I can't." His voice carried. "Yes, you can. We're going to that festival together, Rebecca, and we'll wrap up our conversation the following week." I understood that perilous edge all too well. Under the guise of consulting, I began seeing Elena on a regular basis. In reality, her father had engaged me to assist create their menu for the tasting room following my outstanding barrel room assessment. "You're a natural at this," Elena remarked. Her hair appeared nearly platinum as sunshine poured through the windows of her office, while we discussed wine pairings. "Dad's never been this excited about menu development." "I love what you're doing here," I replied. Elena's smile made her say, "It feels like home," which meant more than simply the wine. I hoped you would remark that we had a close working relationship because my chest was tight. Unquestionably, every unintentional touch and glance we exchanged increased our stress. I found myself eagerly anticipating our encounters. "Tell me about your relationship." "Elena, you remarked that it was difficult one afternoon while we were walking through the vines, and I was hesitant to see the workers. From a distance, Matthew finds my love of wine arrogant and doesn't realize that it must be hard." Elena stated cautiously that sometimes I feel like I don't have my partner's support. "I'm drowning," I confessed, startled by my candor. Elena stopped moving and turned around. "You need someone who appreciates your abilities rather than downplays them. In my opinion, the late afternoon sun is magnificent." Without thinking, I reached up and caressed her cheek, bringing light across her face. Leaning into my hand, she closed her eyes and I gave her a kiss for the first time. Her lips were warm and soft, and when she returned the kiss, everything felt perfect in a manner I had never thought possible. I tried to be normal that evening as we clung to one another among the grapevines, the world vanishing around us. Matthew was nearby, but he saw right away that you were beaming, so he said suspiciously, "What's got you so happy?" He examined me over his beer bottle, saying, "I had a wonderful day at work." "Where? How was your day?" Elena texted me, "Thanks for today." My phone buzzed. "I'm excited to see you tomorrow." Matthew grabbed my phone before I could react, which is faster than me. "Who the hell is Elena?" A client I'm advising on their wine had a frighteningly low voice. Program Elena Butler's expression darkened as he perused our messages. My pulse froze when I heard the name, Vineyards Elena. I completed my homework. He smiled viciously when you said you wanted to test their wine. It's remarkable that you work with them already despite claiming to have never tried their products. It just happened. Naturally, following what you said, he moved closer while still holding my phone. I couldn't breathe. "Matthew, because you were lying to me about where you were going downtown that day. Please stop sneaking about." He mockingly read off my phone. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." How sweet. While he was hanging out behind my back with this woman. "Don't lie to me. It's just business." He flung my phone across the room. You think I'm dumb because I can see what's going on here. Broken against the wall. Nothing's going on. So you cease. His voice was icy. "Call her now. And stop. They're dependent on me for this consulting work. But I can't do that." Matthew snatched. I'm forced to gaze at him by my chin. "And if you don't stop, I'll make sure that everyone in this town is aware of the exact type of—" "You don't even know Elena Butler." "I know enough about her to ruin her priceless family business." Tightened your grasp. "Pick Rebecca or me. But if you pick her, I'll make sure you—" I looked into his brown eyes and saw the cunning cruelty I'd been guilty of. "You both regret it for the rest of your lives." I need time to reflect because I was oblivious to this for a long time. It wasn't love. It was possession, I said in a whisper. "You have until tomorrow." He let me go and went to the bedroom. "Make the correct decision. Sweetie, for the sake of everyone." I stared at Matthew's warnings on the ceiling all night, reverberating in my head, but each time I considered never seeing Elena again. A part of me resisted for the first time in years. Someone made me feel important rather than unworthy, and I wasn't going to let it go easily. The following morning, my palms trembled on the steering wheel as I headed to the vineyard without telling Matthew where I was going. Elena was waiting in the tasting room with coffee and freshly baked pastries from town, but I continued to drive. Exhausted, but everything is all right. "Matthew is aware of our collaboration," I said. "He is graciously accepting the warm mug, but he is unhappy." "What did you say to him?" "I looked into her eyes when we were creating your wine program, but he believes there's more to it." Elena put down the question that hovered between us was, coffee cup carefully. "Is there more to it?" Rebecca, like dawn mist over the vines. I reflected on Matthew's threats regarding the woman and the life I had been leading. I muttered, "Yes," to the person sitting across from me who made everything seem conceivable. Elena's smile was dazzling. Took my hand across the table. "I was expecting you would mention that we collaborated that morning." But the air, each time our fingers touched documents, they crackled with wordless longing. A mutual look led to the obvious conclusion that my father would be in town until Thursday. When Elena said nonchalantly at lunchtime, "I should go home since the house will be empty tonight, and the heat is overwhelming me. If I'm gone for too long, Matthew will be suspicious." What should I do if Elena's blue eyes aren't steady? I wanted to feel alive again, to have someone look at me as though I cared, and to stop being— I acknowledged that Elena prepared that evening, but I'm terrified of my own impulses, and I want to stay. We had dinner by candlelight in the main house, a large Mediterranean villa with a view of the vineyard. "I came out to my parents when I was 25, Elena said as she sat on her family's reserve wine patio, laughing and telling anecdotes. "Dad found it more difficult than Mom to refill our drinks, but they finally warmed up. I've never actually been with a lady before," I admitted, admitting that I had considered it, "but with Matthew Elena leaned across the table, and I didn't have to explain that we didn't have to do anything you weren't prepared for. But I was. When she brought me inside, I followed without question, since her bedroom was comfortable, and I felt like I might have been ready my entire life. She turned to face me in the lamplight, and I saw that she was feminine and nothing like the clinical flat I shared with Matthew. Noticed that her eyes mirrored my own hunger. "Are you sure?" she asked in a whisper rather than answering. I kissed her this time without hesitation or concern for being found out. Elena softly undressed me, simply her warm body against mine and the euphoric sensation of being genuinely wanted. When our flesh touched, it seemed like home because of her respectfully delicate touch, while Matthews had always been demanding. We walked together with a natural rhythm after years of being lost, her encouraging murmurs taking the place of. For the first time, thanks to Matthew's scathing critiques, I realized what closeness should feel like once we lay. I never knew it could be like this, I said, buried in her covers, resting my head on her shoulder and listening to her heartbeat. Elena's fingertips etched designs on my back while whispering against her skin. This is how you should be cherished. Rebecca, I stayed respectfully and gently till Elena accompanied me to my car at around midnight, even though I was hesitant to leave our safe haven. Thinking about what I said, she said, "You deserve better than stealing a final kiss beneath the starry sky. You understand that when I arrived home, the apartment was dark, and Matthew was soundly snoring in our bed. I took a shower. Elena's aroma was gently removed, but the recollection of her touch could not be forgotten. As I slipped into bed, Matthew's hand suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. Where were you? His voice was dangerously alert. Elena's father wanted the menu ready by tomorrow, so he worked late. He stood up in the middle of the night, examining my face. You're lying. I'm telling the truth. You look and smell different. And his hold tightened. What did you do tonight? Rebecca, I focused on the wine while my heart pounded against my ribs. Pairings and returned home. Matthew was silent for a while before letting go of my. He said in a casual tone, "You're going to quit that job tomorrow," as we had arranged, and laid back down. He reiterated, "Matthew, please tomorrow, or I begin calling about." He said, "You can't do that. Watch me." Elena Butler's small pastime of wooing other people's girlfriends. Winter. I know Rebecca business people in this town who wouldn't like to know where their wine comes from. A predatory lesbian owns a vineyard struck me like a blow. Elena isn't predatory, but she's also courteous and friendly, and Matthew treated me better than me in the shadows. I at last managed to speak up. Yes, she is the quiet, opened up like a gap between us. And when Matthew spoke again, his voice carried a promise that caused my blood to freeze. I called the next morning to check on that. I drove directly to the vineyard after calling in ill to work, where I had to inform Elena of Matthew's threats. But when I got there, Elena's at the hospital, Carlos stated grimly as he approached me at the gate. Her father collapsed this morning. I discovered Elena pacing the cardiac unit waiting area at Irving Medical Center. She is typically flawless. When she spotted me, her calmness broke and she ran into my arms. He had a heart attack. She mumbled against my shoulder. The vineyard has been having financial difficulties, and he has been concealing it from the doctors, who say it was stress-related. Me, what struggles do you mean? I felt her shiver as I held her closer. Dad has been taking out loans to pay for running expenses because his treatment's medical bills aren't entirely covered by. Elena fought back tears as she said, "Insurance. We might lose everything," Rebecca said. And it crushed my heart to see her so powerful and vulnerable. As she collapsed in my arms, the self-assured lady who had taught me the meaning of love asked, "How much do you need?" I inquired. 50,000, just. Elena dried her eyes and said, "I'm considering selling the business to pay for immediate expenses, possibly more depending on his recovery. To developers, North Vineyard is the only option." No, the word came out more harshly than I had intended. That property is, there must be another way to honor your ancestry. Elena's laugh was acrid. Like if I watched the lady I loved lose everything as I held her in that antiseptic hospital waiting room while she robbed a bank. 3 days later, as Elena remained at her side, a risky thought started to take shape in my head. I ended up sitting across from a father's bedside at a CD bar in Santa Ana. 50 grand is a lot of money, said Vince, a man Carlos had grudgingly put me in touch with. I'm fine with my teeth gleaming in the low light, especially for someone who works in restaurants. I told my palms are perspiring around my beer bottle. I simply need more time to enjoy this pricey. Vince leaned forward. But I like your style, and you have high-end clientele and ties in the wine industry. I nodded. Here's the deal, sweetie. I loaned you the money, but you helped me move some things out of my way. Product through your upscale wine networks. Wealthy people who don't ask many questions and who adore rare bottles. Regarding provenance, the type of goods, wine that fell off trucks, and bottles that require fresh narratives, you helped me sell to your high-end contacts. And I received my money. Your smile was predatory. But it wasn't violent. Return plus interest. My natural reaction was to turn away, but Elena's tear-streaked face caught my attention. The vineyard meant everything to her family, and her father was fighting for his life. "Okay," I muttered, and Vince slid a big envelope on the table that said, "Wise girl, I'll contact you first." However, I informed Elena, when I gave her the money that night, that it was an advance from a private wine consultation. Client who requested confidentiality. This is amazing, Rebecca, she replied, gazing at, are you certain that the cashier's check but 50,000 for consulting is authentic? Totally authentic. Some collectors pay top dollar for expertise, so I lied while putting my arms around her. Elena's father stabilized over the vineyard's financial crisis, and the weekend briefly improved. But Monday's respite was brief. Vince contacted me this morning with my first task, which was to move 3 cases of vintage Bordeaux through a forthcoming charity. According to the evidence, the bottles at the Beverly Hills Country Club wine auction are exact duplicates. Appears genuine. It's your responsibility to enter them into the auction and ensure a high price. I can't do it since someone will notice if you don't offer them a cause to pay close attention. They're not real. Vince's voice became icy. And you stole my money? Princess, you now work for me. But Matthew's actions became more and more unpredictable. Appeared at Chalaron throughout my shift, enchanting my coworkers and observing my every action before beginning to follow me, showing up at odd locations during the day to see how my girl was doing. He would explain with that phony smile when I faced. When he arrived at the vineyard for the 3rd time, Elena saw that he was making sure you were staying out of trouble. Ex-boyfriend, she asked while observing Matthew's vehicle through her office window. Elena's eyes widened as I realized what I had said after making an immediate correction. Rebecca, what's going on? You've been acting strangely, so it's complicated. Recently anxious, and now your ex is pursuing you before I can respond to my... When the phone rang, he said, Vince auctions tomorrow night. Don't let me down. I wanted to shield Elena from my sadness as I glanced at her. However, I was pulling her into a risky situation while Matthew remained outside, observing and waiting for the... I grabbed my purse and remarked, perfect moment to destroy everything. I have to go. Rebecca waited, but I had already started to run since I knew I was about to lose everything. First, I placed Vince's phony Bordeaux in the Beverly Hills Country Club charity auction, and everything went smoothly. Among genuine donations, my sommelier qualifications intentionally add credence to the provenance. I had faked lot 47, a rare one, 990 document. As my heart pounded my ribs, the auctioneer announced the bottles of Petrus, which had been donated by an unidentified collector. Vince would be happy if it sold for $38,000, but as I observed, I felt sick to my stomach as the successful bidders celebrated their purchases. They had faith in me, felt that I was knowledgeable, and I simply assisted in defrauding them. Rebecca Elena showed up at my elbow looking gorgeous in a black party dress. Why are you here? My mouth dropped. Elena, I assumed you were staying with your dad tonight, and he urged that I go since the vineyard needs to keep connected with the community. Before I could respond, Vince appeared next to us, his blue eyes searching my face. You look pale. Are you feeling okay? This must be the well-known Elena Butler, as he flashes his gold teeth in a sly smile. I'm Elena Caruso, Rebecca's business partner, he added, holding out his hand, courteously shook his hand, but I could see her subtle evaluation as her grin tightened Rebecca's business partners. Vince provided a clear explanation of how he has been assisting me in obtaining rare wines for private clientele. I instantly grabbed Elena's sleeve and exclaimed, "Excuse us. She has such excellent taste." Vince pulled her toward the bar and said, "Count on it. We'll talk later." Elena waited until we were out of earshot, which makes it obvious. Who is that man? Rebecca? He treats me like a client, thus I have nothing to worry about. Elena's voice grew a little bit. You've been aloof for weeks, showing up with, I ordered a mystery check, and now you're dealing with a shady person who appears like he belongs in a criminal movie. I met her, and you wouldn't understand if I told you that my hands were shaking from double whiskey, eyes witnessing pain and bewilderment, where there used to be compassion and trust, that I am unable to articulate at this time. Please just... Elena moved closer and lowered her voice, saying, believe me on this, Rebecca. My biggest nightmare came true before I could respond. Have you gotten yourself into this? Matthew entered the country club with his hair slicked back, his rented tuxedo on, and that calculating, what's he doing here? I smiled, knowing too well. Matthew App, Elena muttered, as though he were a member of Irvine's social elite. He strolled up to us with easy assurance and nodded to other visitors. He said, Rebecca darling, loud enough for the guests around him to hear. You look gorgeous tonight. What do you want? At a charity event? Matthew, is it not possible for a man to check in on his girlfriend? His dark eyes gleamed with ill intent. Elena stepped between us, telling you they were, especially since she's been so busy with her new business endeavors. Did she finish? Matthew's laugh was icy. Rebecca has a lot of stories to share. I felt like I was stuck between two worlds merging these days. Don't you, sweetie? Elena finds herself caught between Matthew's threats and a criminal money laundering plan. Should leave. I frantically informed Elena. In fact, I believe we should all have a drink. Matthew gestured. I have a lot to tell Elena regarding Rebecca's recent activities. Bartender. Matthew turned to Elena after telling the bartender. Don't you think I warned you about 3 champagnes? Did Rebecca, out of feigned care, explain how she obtained the funds to support your family? I've been really interested. Elena's face became white as he mentioned her unexpected wealth. What is he talking about? Is he lying? Matthew took out his phone and displayed. Elena, a set of pictures he had clearly taken while pursuing me, shows Rebecca meeting with well-known crooks at unlawful gambling venues, and my particular favorite is when she leaves a loan shark's office carrying an envelope. Matthew had been keeping records of everything, and I was so rich that my knees almost gave out. Elena responded, "That's not possible," but there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. Is it Matthew? Continuing ruthlessly using wine auctions to smuggle money for your beloved Rebecca, to reimburse dangerous individuals for the $50 Zosen she provided you in blood money? You're crazy, replied. But Elena was looking at the pictures with increasing astonishment. Let me explain. Her voice was hardly heard. So you took advantage of my desperate need to assist. No, that's not how it happened. Criminals, I was lying to you in an attempt to protect you. Tears filled her eyes as I risked the reputation of my family. How could you do this? Rebecca Matthew, who clearly enjoyed seeing our relationship fall apart. See what occurs when you make a poor decision. Rebecca Elena sat down with her champagne glass in trembling hands and said, I need air, hurried off, leaving me standing there with Matthew's victorious grin blazing in my heart. Told you I'd ruin what you cared about, he muttered, but we're not finished yet. Tomorrow, everyone in this town will be aware of the true nature of Elena Butler's girlfriend. As I watched Elena fade into the background, something within of me at last. Matthew had won, but perhaps it was time to stop. I snapped. I'd lost her anyway. After letting him win, I went outside and found Elena on the terrace of the country club, looking out over the city lights. She grasped the stone barrier with trembling shoulders. Elena, let me explain what... She turned to me with tears in her eyes, expressing how you had deceived me from the start and how you had put my family in danger, risk with illegal funds. I didn't intend for all of this to occur. I just wanted to help and stepped closer in desperation. When you intervene with loan sharks to preserve the vineyard, Elena's voice breaks. Do you know what this may harm my father's recuperation and our reputation? Before I could respond, she took out her phone and showed me She stated anonymous tips concerning Butler in a string of text messages from unidentified numbers that began an hour ago. Her hands trembled when she heard that Vineyards was involved in money laundering and that I had ruined other people's girlfriends. My heart sunk when Matthews began his campaign. I'm so sorry. Elena, she said, wiping her eyes fiercely. I really trusted you, and now that you've ruined everything, I'll inform the police everything and accuse my family of committing a federal crime. Elena laughed sourly. Rebecca, don't you realize that there is no way to resolve this? She left me on the terrace, burdened by my decisions weighing heavily on me. I called in sick to work the following morning and spent the day reading up on FBI field offices. I would bring everyone with me if I were going down. But first, I needed evidence that night. While wearing a wire I had purchased at Vince's regular bar, my heart pounded against my ribs as I ordered a beer from an electronics store downtown. But my hands remained firm, Vince stated, sliding into the booth across from me. 38 grand for fake wine. You've got real? As the auction proceeded flawlessly, I carefully stated that I believe I want to leave this. Talent, sweetie. Eventually, Vince's smile disappeared, and until I tell they're out, no one wants to leave. Where would you acquire that much of money if I gave you back the initial 50+ interest? His laugh was unflattering. In addition, you are too valuable, and I have more ambitious ambitions for you, such as this artwork. A Newport Beach trader uses private wine tastings to transport stolen paintings. Vince leaned forward with highly exclusive clients, and you're going to help him grow his business. I won't do it. You will, or your lovely blonde girlfriend may have had an accident. His voice became lethal. Quiet vineyards received a lot of accidents involving dangerous equipment occur frequently, and you leave me with ice in my veins. Elena, please continue working for me. I nodded and made a simple arrangement. When do we begin tomorrow night to make sure the recording device captured every word? After Vince went, I sat in my car and listened to the audio recording of his threats against Elena. I'll text you the specifics. Perhaps I had enough evidence to protect us both with crystal clarity and Matthew's stalker evidence. But when I arrived home, we're celebrating a bit early, aren't we? Matthew was waiting with Chinese takeout containers and a bottle of champagne. I thought we should toast our reconciliation, he murmured. Observing the feast arranged on our kitchen table, he took out my chair with overly polite demeanor. Now that you've realized how foolish it was to choose the wrong individuals, what makes you believe that we have made amends? Matthew's grin was sly since Elena Butler won't. When I notify your manager about your illegal actions, you're going to lose your job. Therefore, you won't be returning my calls. He was correct about Elena. I had phoned her numerous times because you need me now, sent texts and voicemails, but they were all ignored. Rebecca, please sit down and let's talk about what future is it that you stop this in? I'm still standing. Foolish revolt, and keep in mind who looks after you. His speech had that frightening tone I've been familiar with. Patient. But my tolerance has its limitations, and your tolerance made my chest burn with rage. Been following me, taking photos, and threatening those I care about. I've been defending what's rightfully mine. His face clouded as he slapped me and said, I'm not yours. Matthew, we'll see. He stood slowly, and I wasn't for the first time in a long time. I was enraged and terrified of him. If you want to know the truth, I took out my phone and aired Vince's taped threats. This is the result of your jealousy stemming from your harassment of me. When criminals who wished to harm Elena Matthew heard the recording, his expression alternated between shock, rage, and you're wearing a wire, which may have raised concerns. He said, I'm gathering evidence to protect the people. I genuinely care about him. And I looked him in the eyes firmly, excluding you. Those men are dangerous. Rebecca, if they find out, they'll help me. I stopped. Matthew looked at me for a while, as if he were my enemy and wanted to assist me clean up this mess. What do you need to testify about? As if you're seeing me for the first time. Your stalker actions, I replied, closely observing Matthew's face. The FBI will. Matthew ran his hands through his hair, appearing older than his 30 years, as if he wanted to document how this all began. If I assist you in taking down these crooks, Rebecca, they'll know I was involved and may pursue me as well. He remained silent for a while before threatening Elena, saying that this was more than just us. We're both becoming cold as we stare at the Chinese food. What specifically do you need me to do to assist me obtain more? I brought all of my phone records with me tomorrow night when I met with Vince's art dealer acquaintance. From afar while I'm wearing the wire, which is crazy. What if they see us? Then we're both, dead or not. I looked him in the eyes, and this is the only way to keep Elena safe and escape alive. Matthew nodded slowly. All right, but let's call the FBI first. I want experts to support us. The following morning, we faced Agent Sarah Martinez in a sterile office at the federal facility downtown. Listened to our story with increasing curiosity, particularly the threats against Elena that were recorded. Mr. Jenkins, you're stalking. Agent Martinez stated unequivocally that the behavior was unlawful, but your paperwork unintentionally produced a paper trail that can be utilized against this illicit group. But what about Rebecca's role in the money laundering? Matthew inquired as to whether she had been persuaded into cooperating by fraud and threats. Agent Martinez turned to me tonight, and we can work out immunity. We'll wire you appropriately and have agents been stationed close by. What about Elena Vince, who was directly threatened? That evening, I proceeded to the location where we would immediately place Miss Butler and her father under protective monitoring, with FBI officers stationed outside the Newport Beach Art Gallery and Matthew trailing behind. My hands were steady behind the wheel, but my heart was pounding with excitement since the gallery appeared authentic from the outside. However, inside, Vince stood close to a wine exhibit, and pricey paintings hung amid strange gaps on the walls. Rebecca met Tony Castellano, who claimed that Tony moves art, while bottles conversed with a thin man with anxious eyes. Tony's handshake was icy and wet, and he stated, "You're very elegant through wine events." I responded, "Thank you for the hidden recording. I have great connections in the wine industry, and I know the right people. Perfect equipment for our private tasting in Laguna tomorrow evening, with a pilfered impressionist artwork and 20 bottles of rare Burgundy each." Tony's smile was greasy. "Well done. Is to verify the wine's authenticity, as clients discreetly inspect the artwork. What if someone notices that Vince interrupted? Don't worry about paintings being stolen. Just concentrate on, actually, I might have an issue with the wine tomorrow. So I spoke steadily. My ex-boyfriend has been harassing me, following me about, and threatening the expression of my business partners, darkened how much problems he has been having with our arrangement. Images threatening them. Then I took out my phone and showed them Matthew's real stalker images, since I'm afraid he might show up tomorrow night and start trouble. Tony inquired tensely, likely observing, where is this boyfriend now? He's infatuated with me right now? Vince stood up suddenly. So let's go find him some time to send a message that made my blood freeze, saying, wait, that's not necessary. It's very necessary. They made me go outside at gunpoint because he was taking a gun out of his jacket, which couldn't have any loose ends endangering our operation. In the distance, I could see FBI officers shifting into position while I searched the parking lot for Matthew's car. But Tony gestured toward Matthew's Honda, which was 2 rows over silver. But they were too far away. Matthew got out of the sedan as we got closer, raising his hands and talking loudly enough for the hidden. I just want to talk to my lover. No worries about the surveillance. Vince stated that it was time to permanently remove the rifle from Matthew's ribs, because it was already creating a lot of trouble. Matthew knows everyone in Irvine's social scene, including wealthy collectors, so he might be helpful. I moved in between them, who would spend a lot of money on rare items. Vince hesitated, indicating that he couldn't be trusted. Let me demonstrate my dedication, Matthew stated coolly. I'll do whatever you need done. FBI agents with guns drawn sprang out from behind parked automobiles before Vince could react. Federal agents, drop your... Agent Martinez tackled Tony within 30 feet of him after he fled in fright. His rifle wavered between me and the advancing agents as he wheeled toward me, setting me. Agent Martinez yelled as he snarled and dropped the weapon. For a split second, I was afraid Vince would shoot me out of retaliation, but Matthew sprang forward and knocked Vince off. Balance. FBI officers rushed to the area as the pistol went off. Agent Martinez told me, "You did good," as we watched the paramedics inspect us for injuries while cuffing both of the crooks. This operation was greater than we imagined, Vince said as he was carried into a police van. Art theft, money, laundering, fraud. What happens now that you assisted us in dismantling a significant criminal network? I requested that you testify. They are imprisoned, and you receive your life back. She grinned and said, for your assistance, all charges against you will be withdrawn. Matthew showed up. His shirt was ripped next to me, but he didn't say anything else. Rebecca, I apologize for all of the threats and stalking that are attempting to manipulate you. I know, I replied. Agent Martinez merely remarked, Elena's here, indicating the boundary where Elena and a cop were debating. My heart jumped when I watched the crime scene film because she had come. Matthew squeezed. As I turned to leave, I gave her my shoulder and said, you deserve to be happy. 6 months after leaving my previous life behind, I finally realized what freedom felt like. Stood amidst the grapevines at Butler Family Vineyards, observing the hills turn golden as the sun sank. Everyone participating in the money laundering ring was found guilty at the end of the federal trial, and Vince received Fanti. The 2023 harvest looks exceptional. According to the sentences given to Tony 12, and a number of other collaborators throughout the years, Elena said as she appeared next to me with 2 glasses of her dad's backup Pinot Noir. Greatest I've seen since I started working here, I said, smiling as Elena's father accepted the wine. After the criminal issue was resolved, he fully recovered from his heart attack and appointed me as Butler Vineyard's sommelier head. The vineyard flourished with our joint knowledge, receiving praise from wine enthusiasts and other industry. Elena said, Dad wants to talk to you after dinner, as she sat next to me on the wooden bench we'd positioned amid the vines. It's an excellent time to develop our tasting room program, and I have several wine-related ideas. Elena's blue eyes glistened with love as she taught community education workshops, constantly thinking 3 steps ahead. The vineyard felt like home as we watched workers finish their evening duties in comfortable calm, ways I had never encountered before. Following the trial, Matthew relocated to San Diego and took a position with a different insurance firm before departing. He sincerely wished me happiness and apologized one more for his actions. Sincerity therapy had assisted him in comprehending his domineering tendencies, and he had begun dating a new person who seemed to value his softer side. recalling that absurd poll Elena asked about tracing when we first met. My hand patterns are the greatest random pairing I've ever seen. Although I'll confess it's not random, I bought the survey coordinator a seat with the most fascinating woman there, and Elena's laugh was hilarious. I had to find a reason to talk to you about cheating after just one glance at you, so I nudged. Playfully, I assumed that it was fate and simply assisted it as Elena got up and dragged me to my feet as the last of the light in the sky disappeared. Come on, She took me to the wine cave where hundreds of oak barrels were aged at the ideal temperature because she wanted to show you something. A little table between the rows contained candles that flickered in controlled quiet, creating dancing shadows on the stone. Walls Elena, what's going on? Rather than responding, she knelt down and my breath seized in my throat as I took out a velvet ring box. Rebecca Taylor, despite surviving a criminal scheme and choosing to live with me, she managed to salvage my family's vineyard, was composed in spite of her emotions, asking, "Will you marry me?" The ring was flawless, with a beautiful diamond on either side of "Yes," I said, then more loudly. Tiny wine-colored garnets set in a band that resembles intertwined grapevines. Yes, of course, yes. Elena's trembling hands placed the ring on my finger before she got up to give me a passionate kiss. In the middle of we'd kissed for the first time months earlier. I love you. In the aging wine barrels. Rebecca, I admire your boldness, passion, and commitment to doing what's right. As the ring lit the candlelight, I said, "Yeah, I love you too." Elena smiled and continued, "More than I thought possible. Dad already gave his blessing. He argues that anyone who can handle federal criminal prosecutions and yet manage to host the celebration in the vineyard enhance our wine program, therefore earning his daughter's marriage. 3 months later, on a lovely October morning, Elena and I, her grandfather's vineyard chapel, where they exchanged vows decades ago. The wedding was small and personal. As Elena's father went among the autumn vines laden with luscious grapes, friends and family observed our dedication. My parents' acceptance of our relationship and my position in their family was symbolized by the two of us walking down the aisle, flown up from Ohio, initially taken aback by my unexpected engagement, but soon won over by Elena's friendliness and the vineyards. As I stated in our vows, "Beauty, I swear to love you through all the seasons, including harvest and dormancy." Elena responded, "I pledge to be your partner in everything, including challenges and celebrations for all the vintages to come." The reception went on, with your voice being clear and strong in both business and love, supporting your aspirations just as you have supported mine. With guests dancing late into the evening beneath string lights strung between the oak trees, Elena and I snuck a few moments, walking hand in hand through the vines during the celebration, amazed at how our tale had changed from, Elena said, "no regrets," as we observed our friends and family in difficult circumstances leading up to this ideal beginning. I pulled her and said, "only that we didn't meet sooner," as we celebrated around us. As fireworks lit up the California sky over our heads, we pressed close for another kiss. At my vineyard house, I discovered that I had at last discovered what I had been looking for, not just love, but collaboration, celebration, acceptance, and more than just survival, a life. Our first vintage as a married pair, aged to perfection, would be the wine we'd toast with next year. Some stories have spectacular endings, but the best ones start with the same caves where we fell in love. Peaceful times when we decided to create something lovely together. Elena and I had selected one another, and we had selected, okay,